Welcome to Crossbody of Work. My name is Evan.
I am Javier.
This week, a special bonus episode as we talk about WWE 2024 Hall of Famer Paul Heyman.
Yes, the advocate, the wise man, the special counsel. I'm sure there's many more titles that he wants to go through. I'm shocked that he hasn't said consigliere yet.
At
I'm pretty
some point,
sure when he is managing Tony D'Angelo on the main roster, he will be.
oh my God, yeah, for the family, it's gonna be great.
We've got the Don and the consigliere.
On his IMDb, it actually lists a bunch of nicknames. Obviously, there's like Paulie Dangerously,
Yeah.
the Mad Genius, the Mad Scientist, the voice of the voiceless.
Oh,
That's
yes,
with
I
Punk.
remember that one.
The one behind the one in 21 and 1. Paul with a lot of like tongue twister ass nicknames. But no, we're talking about Paul Heyman, and it's not our typical style of episode because we're not like watching Paul Heyman matches or like watching stuff. What we did is Javier found a clip, little compilation of Paul Heyman promos. We'll talk about that. We're just going to talk about Paul Heyman in general because one, it's WrestleMania. Two, it's in Philadelphia. Three, he's getting inducted in the Hall of Fame, and it's in Philadelphia. What the fuck else do you want? We're talking about his impact in wrestling. And it's like, we're not going to be like, do you like Paul Heyman? Of course we like Paul Heyman.
Yeah. I don't know, Evan. Do you like Paul Heyman?
I love Paul Heyman. I think he is one of the smartest wrestling people to ever exist. You know what?
Yeah.
And business acumen be damned. Okay. Like, I know that the ECW thing, sometimes you're the idea guy, not the money guy. Sometimes you got to get a money guy. And I think Paul Heyman just needed the money guy. But
if he had a better accounting department, he would be. If he had a Nick Khan,
ECW would be at worst TNA right now.
ECW would have a Titan Tower.
What is Paul Heyman's greatest achievement?
That's a great question because there's a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I don't know. I really
there's a couple options because you could say it's ECW, right?
Yes, obviously.
You could say it's general influence on the wrestling business. You could say it's his man, like being the best manager of all time. Like, those are three incredible claims to fame.
Yeah, even though he doesn't believe it, and that's why he always calls himself anything but a manager.
Yes,
he's on record of saying Bobby Heenan's always going to be the greatest manager of all time. I can't be that, so I am not a manager. I am blank. I am an advocate.
Advocate. Yeah.
Yeah.
If I had to pick, I would say it's ECW, but not for like the run that ECW had, but for simply the amount of change it spurned in the wrestling world in America. Like, ECW as an entity was great. Obviously not the most well funded, as we will see. However, the things it brought to the States, hey, luchadors have been killing it for years in Mexico. Let's bring them here. Let's give them 20 minutes to tear the house down. Let's have just well-defined characters. Let's have this crazy ravenous fan base. Like, NXT doesn't exist if ECW didn't do the blueprint. The Attitude Era isn't what the Attitude Era is if ECW isn't doing it first, right? WCW's biggest claim to fame for a while was like, wow, this cruiserweight section's really great. Yeah, because they stole them from ECW.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right. I mean, there's a lot of things that he can claim to fame. I mean, hell, he's got the best War Games match of all time. It's him. It's the Dangerous Alliance versus Sting Squadron.
That's true. That's true.
There's so much that could be said about Paul Heyman. And I mean, I'm sure you're probably going to go through his little career path, and we know it starts off as a photographer for the old WWF days where he's employed because of Vince Senior.
He essentially smooshed his way in to an event at MSG. It even says on his Wikipedia that he fast talked his way in. He's just like, "Hey, let me get in here, take photos," and then he just worked at MSG.
Crazy. Which is just it's so Paul Heyman. It hurts. He does that for a while. I don't know where his career actually took him before he became Paulie Dangerously in WCW, but from Paulie Dangerously, he became one of the greatest managers of all time. Just for that run alone, he's one of the greatest managers of all time. And it's incredible We don't talk enough about that because we haven't, you and I weren't around for that really.
No.
So we don't know the full, extent of the Dangerous Alliance and his managerial services in WCW. But from what we've seen, it's been nothing but great stuff. The massive phone is iconic. And he was the manager for some of the best wrestlers WCW had during a period where, just before it really exploded for that company.
Yeah. So his career path was early career. He started on the Northeastern Independents essentially, and became a manager with Kevin Sullivan and Oliver Humperdinck. He did a little bit of like he was in Championship Wrestling from Florida. I know you love the name Oliver Humperdinck, who appeared in our Bam Bam Bigelow episode. Go listen to all of our podcast episodes; they're available wherever you get podcasts. He kind of took on an extension of his own gimmick, which of course is the best gimmick. And that's what Paulie Dangerously was. The brash New Yorker. He was a yuppie back then. Like that was kind of the thing. That's why he had the cell phone and everything. He then would start to work with a bunch of groups. He would end up in the NWA and WCW. He would manage the Dangerous Alliance, a great group. He then would go to ECW when it was Eastern Championship Wrestling. His original job in ECW was to just help people get better at promos and interviews. That was his original role. Eddie Gilbert was booking the territory under Todd Gordon, and then Gordon and Gilbert had a falling out, and then he's like, "Hey, I can't deal with Eddie Gilbert anymore. Paul, you're in charge of the creative." And Paul was like, "Cool," and decided to make a revolution. And I think the funny thing that I didn't know that I learned from his Wikipedia is that after leaving WCW, Heyman first attempted to start a new promotion in Texas with Jim Crockett Jr., but then Jim Crockett Jr. wanted to do a traditional, like, Southern wrestling territory.
No flying top rope moves.
Paul Heyman was like, this is the wrestling of the dinosaurs. We need to evolve. So the fact that he was able to get that spot in Eastern Championship Wrestling, turn it into ECW, it meant so much for the world of wrestling.
Yeah. He was truly a visionary, and I think really has been his entire career. And for the most part, honestly, still to this day is kind of visionary. We don't get a lot of the stuff that's occurred with the bloodline without Paul Heyman. He had a heavy hand in the creative for it, and the bloodline stuff has been some of the best stuff that we've seen over the last, honestly, in wrestling history, but especially over the last few years. And the mind for creativity that this dude has, and the fact that you see that so early on in his career, it's just incredible. And then once we get to the ECW stuff, and he somehow manages to turn this ragtag promotion that's just Eastern Championship Wrestling, where it's really, it's down here. Like it's not at the level, and obviously it's nowhere near the levels of WWE and WCW. It doesn't have television. It's just it's a word of mouth promotion that's in the Northeast. I'm not saying it's a lowly promotion. I'm sure it was a promotion of, if you were to compare to something of today, maybe like a GCW or like a, something like a House of Glory in New York.
Yeah, I'd say GCW is what ROH used to be, and what GCW currently is the closest, like, spiritual successor to what ECW is.
I mean, like Eastern Championship Wrestling, like the point where it was before it became
the
ECW that we know today.
Because it's a relic of the territory days, because it was an NWA territory, and then they did not tell the NWA that they were turning into Extreme Championship Wrestling. They essentially told them to go fuck themselves, and it was a screw job of Shane Douglas, Paul, and Todd Gordon, and they were like, they did this tournament bracket, and then Shane Douglas wins the NWA World Title, and it's like, the NWA can kiss my ass, and then they turned into ECW, which was a very cool thing. It was very cool in 1994 to tell people to kiss your ass.
And then once we're there, we just get extreme, and we start shooting from the hip, and we start throwing people through tables and using barbed wire and all this other stuff. And, the hardcore element in VCW is obviously the thing that has transcended time to this point. But what doesn't get mentioned is the things like you said earlier, like the use of cruiserweights, the way
technical wrestling.
Yes, technical wrestling. Dean Malenko, the shooter. He was a big deal then as well. Like, we see names of these superstars, and the work rate that they had. Guys like like Raven, who we just covered recently, who was really good. Mike Awesome, who we covered recently, who was really good. Masato Tanaka, who we covered recently, is really good. Tommy Dreamer, who, RVD, who we covered on this podcast, is really good. Like Jerry Lynn, these guys who were faces of ECW. Obviously that just Terry Funk, who, when we ever get to the Terry Funk 2-3-parter, it's going, like, the way that I'm going to rave about that man is just going to be one of the more defining episodes of this podcast, because I could go for hours about him. But the way that him and Cactus define that brand as well, Bam Bam Bigelow, so many great names of the 90s and early 2000s, and just in the history of the wrestling, came through that promotion and made it this legitimate third promotion at a time where it was dominated by these two brands, and what is it, 84, 83 weeks and all this other stuff, Attitude Era and NWO here. And ECW really made its name for itself and carved itself as a defining brand. And honestly, the fact that we're still talking about it 25 years later, 26 years later, whatever it may be, it's a testament to Paul Heyman and the work that he put in to creatively and systemically build this alternative way of viewing wrestling.
Who's the best Paul Heyman client?
Oh, why do you do this to me? It's Brock. Like, it has to be Brock, right? Yeah. Over 2 stints, it's Brock.
Here's my question. Who's second?
That's a really good question.
I think that's the better question, because I think first is locked up by Brock, but then second has a couple of options. It could be Roman. It could be CM Punk.
Are we talking only WWE or like only client? No. Or are we also talking about Paulie Dangerously? There were some good people there as well. Yep.
Stunning Steve Austin was there.
Yeah, Stunning
Mean
Steve
Mark Callis.
Stunning Steve is the one that really sticks out to me, but I don't think he's too.
He wasn't there yet.
Yeah, I think I'd have to say. I think Roman. For this run. Punk is right there with him, though. I think I will say, like, I think there's a gap, but it's not as big as people will probably make it. The RVD stuff was pretty cool. I think
the Kurt stuff was weird. Remember the Kurt stuff?
I'd rather not think about that one.
That was weird. Same. Heidenreich, Curtis.
Yeah,
Axel?
we're not talking. No, we're moving beyond we're talking about things that don't make sense.
Test.
Test.
You don't want to talk about Test?
No. Go listen to our Test episode if you want to hear us talk about Test.
Is Test dead?
There's a lot.
Have you seen that Twitter account? I know we talked about it on the podcast. Just shout
the answer
out
to that one is yes.
Shout out to Is Test Dead on Twitter.
And then once we get to that weird crossover period where ECW was still alive, but he signed with WWE or WWF at the time, and he comes over. He's an announcer. He's working behind the scenes in a creative capacity, and then he just comes full board when ECW shutters up. That's when we get the alliance and the invasion angle and all this other stuff. But eventually we settle down, and he becomes the role that I really think is something that should also define Paul Heyman, aside from his on-screen character and ECW, which is the creative that he pulled for SmackDown in the early to mid 2000s.
Yep.
The SmackDown 6 period, the post-brand split SmackDown period, that is some of the greatest wrestling that we've ever seen in the history of professional wrestling as a thing, and he is the center of that.
Can we also talk about him being one of the best color commentators of all time?
JR doesn't agree, but yeah.
JR should agree, though, because they were magic together. They were so good. Paul Heyman was Pat McAfee levels of energy on commentary, but with more of a mind for the business.
The problem was JR fucking hated him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see Paul getting along with everyone all the time. Tommy Dreamer famously was going to kill him at WrestleMania X7, so, he didn't get along with everybody all the time. But still, good in so many avenues, good at creative, one of the best wrestling minds of all time, great manager, hell of a promo, hell of a commentator. And we should probably talk about the promos, because you picked out this compilation for us, and it's great.
It's good stuff.
Not in chronological order. It kind of goes all over the place, and starts at ECW One Night Stand, where he got to come out and shoot from the hip, or as they call it in ECW, a Dean Malenko.
Or as they actually call it in ECW, a promo.
A regular talk. This is the birds and the bees from the ECW.
A regular promo. He says he has something to say, and he's had something to say to this person for a very long time, and he's referring to Eric Bischoff, who's up in the balconies with all the WWE people who have just been making fun of ECW the whole night. I hated that, by the way. It was so dumb.
The only good thing, and we recently covered Mike Awesome on the podcast. You should go and listen to our Mike Awesome episode. Is the only good thing is that JBL is a big fan of Mike Awesome by the end of that match against Masato Tanaka. By the end, you can see JBL like earnestly cheering, like, "Hey, that guy's awesome.
I like this guy.
That guy's cool."
He says he's not at some WCW pay-per-view with his tail tucked between his legs, stuff like that. And that he hates Bischoff. And then he goes, "Hide your wives. It's Edge."
I got 2 words for you. Matt freaking Hardy.
That's 3.
Edge just looks over. That's 3.
Edge just goes, "It's 3." And then he goes like this.
Does the V1. The famous line to JBL happens, "Since you want to shoot, cowboy. The only reason you were WWE champion for years is because Triple H didn't want to work Tuesdays." Heyman holding the mic out to the crowd and JBL feigning a heart attack and yelling Elizabeth. All of it is the best overacting of all time.
This ain't WCW. This ain't Monday Night Raw. This ain't SmackDown. This ain't even WWE. This is motherfucking ECW.
I thought it was an interesting choice for the next promo they put in this compilation because I didn't think it was like a very memorable I thought it was good.
I thought it was pretty memorable.
So it's the one from May 7th, 2012, representing Brock Lesnar. This is when Brock Lesnar quits, quotation marks.
You also have the thing. This is WWE that posted this. So it's like a shoot. Like they have to elevate this a little more.
Yeah.
He pulls out a letter. He says, it's basically all from the perspective of Brock Lesnar. He came back to bring legitimacy to WWE, blah, blah, blah. This is like right after his return. He'd already done his whole program with Cena, all this other stuff. And he had just snapped Triple H's arm. Triple H at this time was the COO of WWE or whatever the hell he was.
Yeah.
On screen. So he did that. He took on official, which people were not happy about. I guess the kayfabe people were not happy about.
Yeah.
He said Brock basically doesn't care about anything, doesn't care about kids, doesn't care about anything, blah, blah, blah. Then he quits. He says, I'm not coming back. I quit. Mic drop. Literal mic drop.
Yeah.
Heyman walks out.
It's a good promo.
Then we get my favorite promo of the bunch here.
SmackDown, November of 2001, right before Survivor Series winner takes all between the Invasion, aka WCW, and ECW versus WWE. This is Paul Heyman allowed to go out there and shoot on Vince McMahon. And
to his face.
It's the best. Could you imagine having your life's work kind of usurped and ruined by a billionaire? A millionaire who should be a billionaire, in the words of CM Punk. And getting to just air out your dirty laundry on TV. That sounds awesome.
If I remember correctly, I think Heyman or someone has basically said that Vince, the only direction Vince gave him that day was, you and me are going to go out for a promo. There's nothing scripted for it. Just air your grievances. Like basically what he told Punk, like go out there and air your grievances. He basically told that to Heyman, just to my face.
Vince, I hate your stinking guts. Your children hate your guts, Vince. You are the most disgusting, vile son of a bitch I've ever seen in my life. Casual Tuesday for Vince McMahon, being a casual or a son of a bitch.
He says Vince took Hulk Hogan's blood and he built Titan Towers.
It's a great line. That's a
He stole Bret Hart's dream. And with that money that he got from it, he bought himself an airplane with WWF all over it. He did that.
You stole Shawn Michaels' smile and made the company a billionaire. Made himself a billionaire. Not a self-made billionaire, but one built on other people's hard work, which is very true.
Yeah, says that Vince McMahon Sr. went around the country and shook the hand of every promoter in this country and swore that he'd never compete with them, which is true.
Yep.
Said that his son would never compete with them. And when his father died, Vince McMahon competed. Says that with his ruthless, merciless, take everything attitude, he took everybody out of business. He ran all the companies to the ground, took all their ideas, and he made himself a billionaire out of it. And you know whose idea he stole the most? Heyman's.
Fine. This is when Paul Heyman goes to a different like place. Like before, it was like the rage you feel at people, like you just feel that rage boiling up inside, whatever. Now it's like hurt. It's like you stole mine. You took my shit all the time.
Vince stole his dream, his legacies, stole everything ECW represented, because while Doink the Clown was running around with his green hair, Stone Cold Steve Austin was drinking his first beer in ECW, damn you.
I think Stone Cold had beer before.
Yeah, but come on. While Bobby Heenan and Gene Okerlund were singing around, ECW was producing the TV that Vince claimed his attitude. Vince stole his life, his ideas, his money, and his legacy.
Paul, I don't think you're in a really good place to talk about taking other people taking your money. I don't think you're in a very good place for that. However,
Not the moral high ground.
I do agree with the sentiment. Okay. This was my favorite promo of all the promos.
Oh, the streak promo.
No. The one we just covered.
Oh,
I agree with you. It's the best one. Because where else are you allowed to be that crazy and raw? And it's just the best. And the next one is streak conquering time. This is the night after WrestleMania 30.
I think this is Paul Heyman's best not shoot promo.
This is his best, maybe his best heel promo of all time. Because he was heel technically in the invasion thing, but really in retrospect, he is strong babyface.
Yeah, I didn't take notes. There's a lot that he goes through here, and a lot of it is just linguistic gymnastics. But like the passion in the promo, the verbiage, the linguistic athleticism.
We hate to say we told you so, but ladies and gentlemen, we told you so is just such a good shit headline. And the
tone that he uses.
There is nothing better in the world of wrestling in terms of like manager and client combo than Brock standing and laughing at Paul Heyman's jokes while Paul
just doing his little
he's doing his little like just his little jig that he likes to do.
And like, what can you do? You can't talk shit to that guy. Like, he's literally probably the most dangerous human being on earth.
And then Heyman just gets to just talk his shit because he has Brock on his side. It's perfect. It talks about after WrestleMania 30, well, during WrestleMania 30, when Vince
gonna shoot from the hip.
When Vince left Gorilla to ride to the hospital with The Undertaker, which I know we all heard about it. I know it's true, and I know we all heard about it. It is wild that Vince left WrestleMania. That's crazy. Vince left WrestleMania? WrestleMania wasn't done.
With The Undertaker.
That's crazy.
Like, is it the amount of care and love that you have to have for another human being to be able to do that? Like, it's not like, it's not Shane, you know? I bet you he didn't leave well, he wouldn't have been there, but I bet you didn't leave WrestleMania. He wouldn't have left WrestleMania last year if Shane blew out his quad and he was still running the show.
How much would Vince have laughed when he saw that Shane blew out his quad? Like,
the last put it on repeat, the replay.
The last two promos here. One is
go
ahead.
He like mentions that that Taker was being treated for a severe concussion, came this close to a broken neck, this close to a cracked skull. And he's lucky he didn't kick out at 3 after that final F5, because Brock would have kept going. He would have given him a broken neck. He would have cracked his skull. And he wasn't going to be done until the streak was broken. It's like he's over here just like waxing poetic about the brutality of the man that he is representing. And it's the fact that he's able to get himself over as a promo while getting the person that he is representing over, because that is the topic of the promo that makes Paul so talented.
It's really good. The last two promos here, we're not going to go through both of them in as much detail. The one is from ECW TV on June 2nd, 2000. It's just because they were getting fucked over by TNN.
Yeah.
That was the network they were on, because TNN decided to get Raw. And so instead they got essentially kicked off of the air for Vince McMahon. The network is going to give $100 million to Vince McMahon. Like he needs it. True. And then he just talks about how, like, for the next couple weeks until you kick us off the air, we're going to just fuck with you. Which, like, I understand the moral high ground and, like, the principle of it all.
Bad business
But
practice.
Paul, you need to get on TV again because you have no money.
Bad business practice.
The last one is calling out the dead man for SummerSlam 2015 because Undertaker cost Lesnar the title.
Which has my favorite Paul Heyman bar.
Go ahead. I know. I have it written down. I know exactly what it is.
I got to take a step back here so that my mic doesn't explode.
Thank you.
You can sell your soul to the devil, but your ass belongs to Brock Lesnar.
I feel for your cat who, if you're watching on YouTube, just was woken from a peaceful slumber because Javier decided to yell that line. Great line. Great bar.
Best to ever do it, and he's still doing it to this day. Thinking back and personally to last year, his promos with Cody before WrestleMania. God, Cody, I loved your father. The way he's able to just be an asshole, and again, it's more than just the the literal content of his promos. It's the tones that he's able to take. You know, it's the stuff like he knows he's got to turn heel on Cody at the end of this promo that's gotten so personal and so like whatever. Like he's got to be like, God, Cody, like he's a stick man. Like he's just a freaking like smarmy little like rat who has to like get into the nooks and crannies and all this other stuff, and he knows that he's got to turn it, so he's being phony. And it's everything. Like he gets it all. It's the fact that he uses big words because he knows the stupid fans won't be able to understand big words. It's the fact that he switches up his cadences. He can go fast. He can go slow. He can just talk normally. All this other stuff. It's the thing that I loved most about when he was Brock's advocate is just like it was literally like he was doing gospel and talking about God. Like he was just out there preaching the word of Brock Lesnar.
There was the one day, I think it was leading into or coming out of WrestleMania 30, where he kept singing, "Mine eyes have seen the glory of the conqueror, my Lord," and just like singing to Brock Lesnar. And I'm like, that's you got to get a ride or die who's like that, who like Brock Lesnar could like, I don't know, like he could slip on a banana peel and Paul would be like, look at the grace and the elegance which the beast incarnate Brock Lesnar carries himself with as he falls on a banana peel, a banana that chose Brock Lesnar, and he put it in the garbage. Like he would manage to turn it into something. He's a wizard like that.
I love that, man.
I hope that Paul Heyman remains in the business in some capacity for as long as he wants to, because he's really good. And the wrestling business is better with him. And even if it's just like a wise man character, where like just be backstage and talk to talent and make them smarter.
And you know, he has said many times that like just because he has avoided wanting to go into the Hall of Fame. One, because his career, he's always said, my career is nowhere near over. Like I don't want that because like I don't want that recognition now because I still have so many years left to do it. And stuff like that. And, I think Triple H, who is very clear that Triple H got the book for the Hall of Fame with this class. And I think he just kind of wore him down to the point where, listen, it's Philly. It's a big WrestleMania, like probably the biggest WrestleMania of all time. Just come on. And it's great that he's getting this induction. I have no idea who's going to put him in. It's probably going to be Punk. I had to guess.
Punk does say that he's going to be in Philadelphia, so
yeah, that's probably going to be him. It would make a lot of sense. I mean, who better at that? Honestly, like who is a better realistic option? Like I know Brock Lesnar, but it's not going to be Brock. It can't be Roman. It's not going to be any of the ECW people. Like can't be Vince.
No.
So Punk makes the most sense. It's basically his son when it comes to the wrestling industry.
Yeah.
And he's also a great promo, so it'll probably be a good speech.
It's going to be a very good speech.
Can't say enough good things about Paul Heyman. In my opinion, the greatest manager of all time. But then again, don't crucify me. I'm only 26 years old. I never saw Bobby Heenan do the stuff. We've gone back and covered so many matches during Bobby Heenan's tenure with both WWEF and WCW.
Yeah.
The guy is incredible. I will always give Bobby Heenan his flowers. I think he is one of, if not the greatest commentator of all time. I think he was just as good a promo and manager as he was a commentator. But Paul Heyman just has this knack for this business that very, very, very few people do. He is a true generational talent when it comes to a mind for the industry. And there just cannot be enough said for the good that he has done for the wrestling business. I wish there was a way to measure how many people are now wrestling fans because of Paul Heyman.
That's true.
Because if there were, it would be millions upon millions upon millions of people. Just the influence of that man on this industry. Me personally, I am a direct result of Paul Heyman having the book on SmackDown.
Paul Heyman, I'm going to leave you with a couple of Paul Heyman facts as we wrap up.
Go ahead.
Paul Heyman won the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Best Non-Wrestler in 2001, 2002, 2004, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2018, 2019, 2021, and 2022. He's the best non-wrestler in wrestling 10 times, a whole Sean Spears amount. Isn't that crazy? He has the record for most individuals that he has managed being as world champion. He has managed 6 WWE champions. Can you name them?
Brock, Roman.
Yep.
Big Show.
Yep.
Kurt.
Yep.
WWE champions.
WWE World, or it says World Champions.
Punk.
Yep.
The last one's gonna be difficult. RVD.
Yeah. 6 different world champions. Not to mention managing Stone Cold in his early days, Undertaker in his early days, cool stuff like that.
Being the reason for the greatest War Games match ever.
Best Booker, 1994 through 1997, and then again in 2002. Paul Heyman, simply one of the best to ever do it. Hey, thank you for joining us on this little special episode. You should follow us at Crossbody of Work on Twitter and Instagram because, hey, we're going to be at WrestleMania 40. Check out the merch link. It's in the show notes of the bio. It's also in the description on YouTube. Also, make sure you hit subscribe. We're going to have so much stuff coming out of WrestleMania. Make sure you follow us on social media so you can see all of our updates. We're going to be doing video and audio pods immediately after WrestleMania, both nights. We're going to be doing predictions for all the stuff happening at WrestleMania. We'll tell you what it's all about at Tribute to the Extreme 2, because we're going to be at the ECW Arena on Friday night, checking out a bunch of old ECW guys. We're going to see Atsushi Onito wrestle. That's fucked. All right.
Oh, man.
Thank you so much for joining for this special edition. Of course, we will have all the WrestleMania pods coming in this weekend. We will talk to you later.
Your ass belongs to Brock Lesnar.